Without any further ado, Rabbi Sturgess.
I'm going to try without a microphone, and if you want a microphone, then you turn it off. Okay, how's this? It's okay? Can people hear?
Yeah.
Generally it's okay?
Yeah.
If you change your mind, feel free. Okay, good morning everybody.
Good morning.
It's a real pleasure to be back in Chigwell, to be back on home turf. A few months ago, Rabbi Davis asked me to come and speak at this reflection seminar and to tell my story. And so I agreed, because I always do what Rabbi Davis tells me to do. And that's not a joke, I do. And then as this date drew closer and I was thinking about what I'm actually going to say, I thought that I was a bit young for an autobiography. And I realised that there are plenty of celebrities out there who released their first autobiography at the age of 16, and then the next at the age of 18, and I thought, okay, so perhaps I've got a little bit more experience in years, certainly, than them. But I picked up the phone, and I called Rabbi Davis, and I said, when you asked me to speak and to tell my story, what exactly did you have in mind? And I was hoping that he would give me the script and say this, but he didn't. But I'll tell you what he did say. He said, I think that people would be interested to hear how and why an intelligent boy from Chigwell, I'm only quoting him, that's what he said. That's what he said. How and why, people would be interested to hear how and why an intelligent boy from Chigwell chose a religious life. And I get it. Why would anybody do such a thing? And so that's our topic this morning, and I guess that we'll start somewhere near the beginning. As many of you will know, I was born and raised in Chigwell. My parents lived in Chigwell my entire life. It was just a couple of years ago that my mum moved away from Chigwell after my dad passed away. But we do have still a family connection here, that my in-laws moved to Chigwell shortly after we got married, and Robert, my father-in-law, is here next to my mum over there. So our connection, both in reality and also in my heart, is still very strong. It's strange talking about your childhood in front of your mother, because she may well have a different perspective on it. And she'll be sitting there thinking, what's he talking about? And that's not true, and it never happened that way. And to be honest, she's probably right, because when my childhood happened, I was just a child. And she was a grown-up, so she probably remembers things more accurately. So if anything I say is wrong, Mum, just shout out, okay? I'm actually not going to speak too much about my childhood, apart from to say that I was blessed to have the most amazing, loving, encouraging and supportive parents. I would say that we were a traditional United Synagogue type family, if that means anything to anyone. Does that mean anything? So I guess we were something like that. I went to Chigwell Primary School, and then to Davenant in Loughton, so non-Jewish schools. And then when it came to choosing universities, by the way, we've done the first 18 years in 5 minutes, so we'll have you out by 11:15, I think. So when it came to choosing universities, I decided I didn't know what I was going to do for a career. I always liked maths. That was something that came naturally to me, something that I found I could do, so I was going to study maths at university, and I thought I could do Spanish with it as well, and then I get a year in Spain as part of my degree. Okay, not the most pure of motivations perhaps, but a good decision nonetheless. I did a 4-year degree, the 3rd year in Spain studying maths. And so I drove around the country as pre-university students do, choosing a university. And based on the courses, my top 2 choices were Manchester and Exeter University. And my dad, whose role in life was to be supportive and quell, which he did really well, decided to dabble in guidance at this stage. And he said to me, "Why don't you go for Manchester?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because there's lots of Jewish students there." And I thought, that's a selling point. And for me, it wasn't a selling point. And Exeter, I preferred the course a little bit more, the combination of the maths and the Spanish, and I took the decision to go to Exeter, not to get away from Jewish students necessarily, but being around Jewish students at that stage in my life was not a big plus or a reason that would guide my academic choice. Exeter University is one of the least Jewish universities that one could hope to attend, if hope is the right word. There wasn't a JSOC there at all. You know, life has its twists and turns, and it sometimes takes us in directions where we don't know exactly where we're going to end up. And things happen to us in our lives which take us in a certain direction, and we make decisions which take us in a certain direction, and we don't fully understand at the time the future impact of what we are doing or the decisions that we're making. The Torah tells of an episode where Moses asks to see God, asks God to reveal himself to him. And God and Moses are pretty close at this point, and Moses decides he would take his chances and ask God, "Let me understand your ways." And God says, "You can't, because you're human. No human being can see my face and live." He says, "But I'll show you my back." What does this mean? So the commentators explain that no human being can understand the way that God runs the world. Because by nature we are finite, we are limited, and we cannot understand what goes on in an infinite mind. What does it mean that God was prepared to show Moses his back? It's the idea that sometimes in life, with hindsight, with the perspective of time, we can see patterns in our lives, and we can see why things happened the way they did. Maybe we didn't see it at the time, but looking back over the years, we can see how the dots joined together to bring us where we needed to be at any point in our lives. And for me, this choice of Exeter University was one of these critical moments which I didn't appreciate the impact that it would have at the time. The decision to go to Exeter University as opposed to Manchester University, I believe, completely changed the trajectory of my life. I'm quite sure that if I had gone to Manchester University, the more Jewish option that my dad wanted, I would not be a rabbi today, I would not be standing in front of you today, I would not be married to my wife, and I wouldn't have my amazing children. And we'll get to, hopefully a little bit later, how that transpired. So there I am, quiet boy at Exeter University, minding my own business with my non-Jewish friends, that's who was there. And towards the end of my first year, I got an email. And the email said, "Hi, my name's Rebecca. I'm Jewish. I heard you were Jewish too. There might be a few more too. I thought it might be nice if we met up for a drink." So I thought, why not? And so I wrote back and I said, "Sure, let's do that." So she said, okay, so let's meet at such and such a pub. She said, you'll recognise me because I'll be wearing a black hat and a black coat. I thought, was this some sort of joke? But it wasn't, and there she was. Rebecca was there in front of the pub with her very nice black hat and a very stylish black coat. And there were 4 of us in that meeting. There was also a girl called Sophie and another called Stephanie. And Rebecca and me. So yeah, it was very nice. And we spoke about nothing Jewish at all until the end of the evening. And then Rebecca said, look, we're coming to the end of our first year. The beginning of our second year is going to be the Freshers' Squash. You know what the Freshers' Squash is? Where all the clubs and societies set out their stalls and they would try and recruit the new first years. And so she said, why don't the 4 of us get a table in the Freshers' Squash and say that we're a Jewish society, because there wasn't one. Let's say we're a Jewish society and see if any Jews walk past and if anybody wants to sign up. And so this is what we did. At the beginning of my second year, the 4 of us stood at this table. I was completely out of my depth, didn't know what I was doing, but I stood at the table, and 8 people signed up for the Jewish Society. I know. And most of them were Jewish. They'd heard, clearly. So there I was, quiet boy with no leadership, experience, aspirations or interest at all, de facto on the JSOC committee of Exeter University. So the first event, of course, was a Friday night dinner, followed by clubbing at the university club. And it didn't seem strange to me at the time as it does now. But that's what we did. And it came to the beginning of this Friday night dinner, time for Kiddush, and Rebecca looked at me as though I was going to make Kiddush, being the male of the 4 on the committee. And I knew the Berei Priagofen bit, but I didn't know the longer bit at the beginning. So I said the Berei Priagofen bit. And we had a very nice evening, and then we went to the university club. And so there I was on the JSOC committee, and I was the one that they looked to for all the Jewish male roles, like making Kiddush, and actually that was it. But apart from this group, I had entirely non-Jewish friends at university, and then there was the JSOC thing that kind of I did sort of on the quiet, on the side. And from time to time, my non-Jewish friends would ask me questions about being Jewish, about what does Judaism believe about various things. When I went out to eat, I would eat vegetarian, and people would sometimes say to me, I didn't know you were vegetarian, and I wouldn't want people to think that I was vegetarian, so I explained, I'm not vegetarian, it's because I'm Jewish, and there's certain meats that we can eat, and certain meats we can't eat. And sometimes they'll say, why is it that Jews can't eat pork? And I remember, and it happened a number of times, and I go, don't know, not sure. And I had a line I said, just because I was born Jewish doesn't mean that I know everything there is to know about Judaism. Good, right? But I still felt I should know this. Yeah. I should know this. I should have a really impressive answer. I remember in my 3rd year in Spain, also not a particularly Jewish place to spend a year, in the north of Spain particularly. And we were out one evening, and the conversation got deep and spiritual. And one of my friends turned to me and says, what does Judaism believe about life after death? There's that same feeling again. Oh gosh, what a great question. I wish I knew the answer to this one. And I was so sure there was a really good answer. And I said, just because I was born Jewish doesn't mean that I know everything there is to know about Judaism. I really wish I knew the answer to this one. So now back in Exeter, my final year, still didn't know what I wanted to do for a job, and so I thought I would do some further study. It's quite academic, and therefore maybe a master's in something. What could I study? I thought, you know what, why don't I study Judaism and get all these answers? And that's why I decided I wanted a crash course in Judaism. Start from the very beginning, tell me everything there is to know about Judaism, and I don't need that line anymore, and now I can know. That's why I decided. So where was I going to do this? Well, Israel, get a holiday as well. Same thinking, I had a consistency there. And so who would be able to advise on an appropriate place to go for this study? Of course, Rabbi Davis. So I came to see Rabbi Davis. Is there a clock in there? Over there, thank you. Thank you. You didn't help me at all, but I can't. And so I said to Rabbi Davis, I want a crash course in Judaism. What can you suggest in Israel? I had one idea after some looking around that I did. He said no on that one. You remember what that was? And he suggested 3 alternatives. Aish, or Sameach, and Chappelle's. And so I looked around on the websites, and I chose Aish, that's right. Can you see from here? Don't know where I am, I was just talking. Oh yeah, I went to Aish. Okay, so I signed up for the beginner program in Aish, which was a month program called Essentials, followed by 3 months of the intermediate program, and I was quite sure that that 4 months would give me indeed everything there was to know about Judaism. And the reason that I chose Aish was that the course appealed to me. The reason I was going was for purely academic reasons, and the subjects listed were Jewish history, Jewish philosophy, Hebrew language. It was exactly what I was looking for. And so I worked as an actuary for 6 months before I went to earn enough money to pay for this 4 months. And off I went with the blessing of my amazingly supportive parents. But within the very first week of my being there in Jerusalem, in the yeshiva, everything changed. Again, the reason that I went there was purely academic. It was to be able to answer all of my non-Jewish friends' questions. It was to be able to feel like I understood and I could give good answers. It was also my heritage, and I wanted to know and I wanted to understand. I had no intention of becoming more religious, and in fact it didn't even cross my mind that that would be a possibility. I was going there for academic reasons, because I wanted the information. But then in the beginner program, they asked some really unexpected questions. And perhaps with hindsight, they weren't so unexpected, or perhaps I shouldn't have been so unprepared for them. But they asked questions like, is there a God? It's like, whoa. Jewish history, Jewish philosophy. I didn't think it was going to get who wrote the Torah. And believe it or not, at the age of 22, these were not questions that I had spent any significant time considering, and certainly not researching. So this question, is there a God? I was going there for information, not to be challenged in this very personal way. Did I believe in God growing up? And so just looking back now, I do remember lying in my bed at night, talking to something. If somebody in my family needed healing, if somebody needed something good in their lives, I would say, please look after this person. Please let me pass my exams. I found myself doing this, and so I was certainly behaving as though I believed in God. I also remember an RE class I must have been about 12. And the teacher asked, "Put your hand up if you believe in God." And I remember my thought process. I'm Jewish, and therefore, and I put my hand up. I'm Jewish, and therefore I believe in God. But the way that this question was now being posed in Israel was very different. The question was, what evidence is there for God's existence? Is it more likely that this world has a creator, a designer, or is it more likely that this world, that life came about through chance? What evidence is there that God wrote the Torah? What evidence is there that the Torah was written by man? All of a sudden it was presented in rational terms. Now it was speaking my language. And now I got very excited. I got very excited to embark on this voyage of discovery to answer these questions. And then I discovered a question which is perhaps even more important than those two, the existence of God and the authorship of the Torah. And that question is, what difference does it make? And in many ways, it was this latter question that was the first trigger that caused me to make changes in my life. Should we do a bit of audience participation? Should we not? What difference does it make? What difference does it make if there's a creator and if the creator wrote the Torah? Any suggestions? Avi?
There's actually a reason for us being here.
Reason for us being here? Yeah. Anyone else brave enough?
You might have to change your behaviours.
You might have to change your behaviours, yes. Very much so.
It doesn't really make a difference.
It doesn't make a difference? Okay, okay. We'll get there. Thank you for answering the question. So my realization, very early on in my Israel experience, was that there's nothing more important in life than answering these questions. If the Jewish claim is true, big if at this point, if the Jewish claim is true, that the world has a creator who created me, who created all of humanity, created the universe, that there's a purpose, that he communicated that purpose with us in the form of the Torah, and in there he describes how human beings are to maximize their existence in this world. That's the Jewish claim. If that's true, that's amazing. How exciting is that? That's amazing. The creator of the universe and the creator of me wrote a document which we can actually read. It's a physical document, the Torah. We can hold it, pick it up, we can see it, we can read it. And it describes in there, it's called Torat Chaim. The Torah is called Torat Chaim, which means, Torah means instructions. Moreh is a teacher or instructor. Torat Chaim, instructions for life. It's the instruction manual that came along with creation. You buy any product, it comes with an instruction manual. You get out the product, you put the instruction manual in the bin, and you have a go. And that's what some of us do with life as well. We have a go, we'll see how we do. The Jewish claim is, God created the world, he created us, and he gave us an instruction manual. This is what you're here for, this is how it works. Here's a nice feature. It says that in there as well. If that's true, that is ridiculously exciting. And I want to be a part of that. Again, a huge if, with capital letters at this stage. But that's the claim. That's what is on the table to be discovered. And so I realized that that there's nothing more important in life than answering these questions. And I realized that I had stumbled upon life's most important questions. Conversely, by the way, let's play it out, even though Rabbi Davis is over here. What if I came to the opposite conclusion in my rational research to answer these questions? What if I could demonstrate that there was no existence for God, or not enough existence for a creator, or that it could be demonstrated that the Torah had human authorship? Then what? And by the way, at this stage, I was open to either possibility. I didn't really mind. I just wanted to know the answer to these questions. I wanted to know what was true, what was real. And it was quite a powerful realization. What would happen if I could demonstrate, to my own satisfaction, that there was no evidence, or not enough evidence of God's existence or the divine authorship of the Torah? Well, when I got back home to Chigwell, what would my life be like? Would I continue refraining from eating pork? I don't know, I certainly didn't have any desire to have bacon and eggs for breakfast, but perhaps it would be intellectually dishonest if I didn't. How could I live with myself if I wasn't eating bacon and eggs? No desire to, but that's something I would have to grapple with. And maybe you're thinking that it doesn't really matter if God wrote the Torah or not, because there's definitely a lot of good ideas in there. And can't we get the good ideas that are in there? In any case, whoever wrote it, maybe it was written by man or a group of men, and it's good guidance for life. And I came to the conclusion that actually it wasn't so simple. And what I'm going to share with you next is not so comfortable. And if anybody's easily put off their stride, then turn away if you like. But I'll tell you a realization that I had. Let's do a bit more audience participation. Please raise your hand if you are proud to be Jewish. I'm only looking at the people with their hands up, by the way. I'm not looking, if you haven't got your hand up, you don't have to. I was going to say I'm not going to report back to Rabbi Davis, but he's seeing, he's watching. So now, I think it will be okay. Did you put your hand up? Rabbi Davis? So now, Jewish pride. If the Jewish claim is true, then we have an awful lot to be proud of. We are the descendants of those who stood at Mount Sinai, experienced national revelation of the divine, who received the instruction manual for creation, who experienced 10 plagues and the splitting of the sea. We are the descendants of those amazing people who said, Naseh v'nishma. We want to accept the Torah because we want a relationship with you, God. We are their descendants. That's enough to be proud of. However, if I could demonstrate that the Torah is written by man or men, then who are we descendants of? We're descendants of a people who were fooled into believing that all this stuff happened when really it didn't. And then they were tricked into passing down, teaching their children about all this stuff which didn't happen. And we are the descendants of those people who either willfully deceived their children by telling them that God revealed himself to us and there was 10 plagues in the splitting of the sea, or they naively believe this stuff and story, which is quite uncomfortable. Is anybody else uncomfortable? It's just me. That's quite uncomfortable, I think. And by the way, we can't say that the Torah is just a book of good ideas written by well-meaning human beings, because it says in there, I am the Lord your God. Replete in the Torah is the claim that this is God talking. Anochi Hashem Elokeichem, I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. I am God talking to you, telling you all this wonderful stuff for you to do, to maximize your existence. So these well-meaning human beings who are writing this document, let's say if that's going to be my rational conclusion, are claiming to be God in order to sell this document to the people. It's fraud. Forgery. You're uncomfortable. I know, I'm uncomfortable. Sorry. And so really, it makes a massive difference who wrote the Torah. If the Jewish claim is true, that the Torah is written by God, and by the way, spoiler alert, I believe it is, then we have a tremendous amount to be proud of. We are the descendants of those who stood at Mount Sinai, who had a national revelation from the creator of the universe, who said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we want to have an eternal relationship with you, God. By the way, just to lessen the blow slightly, to ease my own discomfort slightly, if not yours, we do have a lot to be proud of, in any respect, for the Jewish contribution to society and civilization over the last 3,000 years. Remarkable. Remarkable. Whatever the reasons for it. Famous statistic, the proportion of Nobel Prize winners that are Jewish, in all fields, in the sciences, in literature, in peace, of course, over 20% of Nobel Prize winners are Jewish, coming from less than 0.2% of the population. It's remarkable. So many of the ideas that we take for granted in society are Jewish ideas that did not exist in the world before the Torah. The idea of peace as an abstract ideal. It wasn't a reality. In the ancient world, a nation, if it existed and it was strong, then it would conquer the neighboring country. That's the way things were. Countries would conquer each other. An ideal of peace, that I'm going to stay where I am in my borders. Jewish idea. Family values. Education for all. Jewish idea. And therefore the Jewish contribution to civilization, we have a lot to be proud of. I would put that down to the wisdom of the Torah, which is of divine origin. That's why it's so amazing, and that's why it's been so successful. But in any case, we have a lot to be proud of in terms of Jewish history for all those that put up their hands. And so, I set out on this voyage of discovery to answer these questions in a rational, in an intellectual way. I wanted to know what was true. It turned out that 4 months was not enough to answer these big questions. And so I extended my ticket for another term, and then another term, and then another term. And then, after around 2 years, I think it was around the 2-year mark, that I admitted to myself that I knew the answer, that it was true, and that I was going to have to change things. But I realized that I really knew before that, but there's something called cognitive dissonance, which kicks in when you realize that you're going to have to make uncomfortable changes. Many, many positive changes, but also some difficult ones. There's the cognitive dissonance which kicks in and says, you know, you don't have to commit to anything right now. What time do we need?
10 to.
Okay. You can all have a drink as well if you've got one. Okay, I'll share with something that I found interesting that I learned. There's 2 categories of reasons why a person could choose to live according to a certain philosophy or religion. Number one, because it's true. Number two, because it feels good. Which of these is reason for Judaism? Magnificently, it's both. In our prayer services, the Torah is called in one place Torat Emet, which means the Torah of truth. Say in the bracha following a call up to the Torah, Asher Natananu Torat Emet. And it's also called in Sim Shalom Torat Chaim, the Torah of life. And this represents these two ideas. Torat Emet, the Torah is true. We live according to it because it describes reality, whether we like it or not. And Torat Chaim is the Torah of life. It gives us life, it gives us energy, it gives us passion. So Torat Emet means that it's true. It describes reality. Another of my learnings was that there's nothing more important than living according to reality. Whatever that reality is, I want to know that I'm living in reality and not living in a fantasy in my mind. I'll give you an example. Car is driving, heading towards a cliff, and the driver sees a sign that says danger cliff, and the driver thinks, you know what, I'm enjoying my driving in this direction towards the sunset. And off he goes. What happens? Reality. Reality. It's important for us to know what is real, because there are consequences for us making decisions. Another example, a person is unwell, and they go to the doctor, and let's say they're diagnosed with a certain illness, and there's a certain cure, a certain treatment, and the treatment might be unpleasant. And this patient doesn't like the diagnosis. So he goes for a second opinion, who gives him the same conclusions, the same diagnosis and the same treatment. And a third opinion and a fourth opinion, until it becomes overwhelmingly obvious that this is the condition and this is its treatment. So he decides to undergo the treatment, and he is cured. This is an example of living according to what is real, even though it's hard. Because it's much better than the alternative of living in a fantasy world of things that we would like to be true, but might not necessarily be true. A third example. A person finds a beaker of delicious-looking pink liquid, and he thinks, "Ooh, delicious, I would like to drink that." And then and he's just about to put it to his lips, and somebody calls out, "Stop, it's poison!" So now he knows reality, now he has a decision to make. How does he feel? So he might be disappointed, but hopefully he's pleased to be living in reality. Hopefully he's pleased to know the truth. So when it comes to choosing a way of life, the most important thing is to know what's real, to know what's true. It's better to drink a medicine which might be bitter but which will make us better than to drink the delicious-looking poison. So this is the idea of Torat Emet. The Torah is true, and really, whether we like it or not, this is the best thing for us. We have to do it because it's true. That's one level. However, thanks to the kindness of the Almighty, the Torah is not a bitter pill that we have to swallow. The Torah is also Torat Chaim. It's also the Torah of life. It's also the Torah of energy, of passion, and of happiness. It tells us in the Torah how to get the most pleasure out of life. In fact, last time I spoke here, we spoke about the 5 levels of pleasure. It teaches us how to live fulfilled and meaningful lives. And when we do it right, and there are some, by the way, who don't do it right, but when we do it right, then it tastes good and it tastes sweet. And so both of these components are important in living the most fulfilled Jewish lives that we can. One is to know that it's true, and secondly, to know that it is life-giving, that it's enjoyable, that it's fun, that it's meaningful and fulfilling. An example of Torat Chaim, of the Torah of life. Rabbi Davis reminded me only recently that when I'd been in Israel for 6 weeks. I've been in yeshiva for 6 weeks, and he happened to be in Israel, and he came to visit me. And he asked me how it was going. And I apparently replied, I didn't remember this, but he reminded me. He said, my reply was, I never realized that life like this existed. Living in Jerusalem, spending time with the people and the families that I was spending time with. They didn't have necessarily easy lives, but there was an overwhelming contentment about their lives. Everyone was learning, everyone was growing. It was an environment of everybody seeking to become a better person, to improve themselves. And when you're existing in that environment where everyone is happy to accept their mistakes because it's an opportunity to learn and to grow, it's a very powerful experience. I was fortunate enough to stay with many amazing families for Shabbat, and they were such warm and welcoming and interesting places. The meal times were filled with singing and discussion of fascinating life lessons from the Torah. And the old and the young were all involved. It was so beautiful that we borrowed or stole some of the customs from those families. One family I went to, they would play a game called Mystery Drink, where the father would produce this juice, a combination of fruit juices, and everyone around the table had to taste the juice and identify the fruits that were in that drink. Not only was it fun, but it was also powerfully meaningful. It was the lesson about savouring God's gifts. Let the juice roll around your mouth. Taste the flavours that are in it that were created by God for our pleasure. Food and drink is not just there to be downed, like animals eat their food, but it's there to be enjoyed. Take your time, appreciate what's in it. The lesson of appreciation. And we've been playing the mystery drink game in our family for 13 years now. At another family that we stayed with for Shabbat a number of times, they had a different custom. On a Friday night they would play the gratitude game, where each member of the family, everyone around the table, would express gratitude to somebody else around the table for something that they had done for them this week. Very simple idea. So you had a 6-year-old boy thanking his mummy for driving him to his friend's house. You had sisters thanking each other for borrowing their makeup and their hairbrushes. A game as part of Shabbat which trains children to appreciate the things that their family members, even their sisters, do for them. To appreciate the things that others do for us in our lives, but also training us to express our gratitude to other people. We've also been playing the gratitude game for 13 years in our family now. A few minutes left. So to fast forward a little bit through the second half of my life, after that initial 2.5 years in yeshiva, I'd come to the conclusion that this was life, that there was a creator who created the universe and created me for our pleasure, enjoyment and fulfillment, and the Torah was the means to get there. But I needed to explore this new religious me in the real world, coming outside of the bubble. There's an expression, in the real world. But it must be said that I've never experienced anything more real than those years in Jerusalem. But, be that as it may, I came back to London. I worked in the city for a couple of years. I met Ali, my wife, and we got married, and then went back to Israel for a further 4 years of study in Aish, also the Meir Yeshiva, culminating in Smicha. And fast forwarding through the most recent decade, we were the rabbinic couple for Aish in Birmingham for 4 years, after which we returned back down to London, to St Albans, where I'm currently the rabbi. Also worked for Seed and currently working for the United Synagogue, doing a number of things, including working with their publications. And in the last minute that I have, I'd like to end with 3 appreciations. The first is for Rabbi Davis, who's now no longer here, for suggesting that I go to Aish in the first place, which really did change my life, and he just walked in at the right moment as I'm appreciating Rabbi Davis, for starting me on an amazing journey that I could never have imagined at the time, and who has supported me and been my mentor ever since. Thank you. My second appreciation is of Rav Noach Weinberg, who I could have spent many hours speaking about, and I'm just going to do so for about 10 seconds now. He was the founder and the Rosh Hashiva of Aish, and he had the incredible ability to crystallize Torah's wisdom into easily digestible, easy understandable life lessons. He was a big thinker, a big dreamer, who carried the responsibility for the world on his shoulders. And every week he got up in yeshiva, he said the same things over and over again, drumming into us the important things that he felt that we needed to understand. He taught us to take responsibility for others. In fact, to take responsibility for the entire world. He would settle for no less. He taught us that Judaism is not all or nothing. Every mitzvah is a gold mine. He would continually bang on the stand and remind us that life is gorgeous. Life is gorgeous. It can be hard at times, but don't ever forget that life is gorgeous. Every time he gave a talk, he would drum into us how much God loves us. That God's infinite love for us is greater than the love of any parent for their child. And that leads me on to my third and final appreciation. And that's for my amazing parents who have supported and encouraged me every step of the way. And I'm well aware that it's not always the case that parents are so supportive and encouraging when their children become sugar frum, as Ashley Blaker might put it. So thank you, Mum. And thank you all for listening.